Hello, welcome to Theosophy in Wales. I'm Dave Marsland. Past life regression, the pluses and minuses. Well, the first question to ask is it reliable? And secondly, is it even possible? Well, with possibility, if you're an extreme materialist, you would be unable to accept that consciousness can take place outside the brain, and therefore you've nothing to remember past lives with. You're just impossible to remember anything from before you existed in this life. But I don't think many hardcore materialists will be watching this posting. So I'll move on to reliability and risks. Now here in this posting I'm really talking about visualization CDs and hypnotic regression. If you're engaged in a level of serious inner work, then you'll probably won't be bothered with the first two. You'll be at a higher level, and if you're spiritually developed, then you move on. You won't consider hypnotic regression and CDs. So you'll have moved beyond that. Now, what are the risks? Tapes, I don't think there are any. I don't think that, so I've said tapes, I mean CDs, I'm a bit out of date. CDs, recordings, visualizations, I don't think there are any real risks, because I don't think it'll open up anything that you can't handle. I think that's fairly straightforward. And you can accept or not accept the results. Hypnotic regression, yes, it does carry some risks. Looking back in the history of hypnotic regression, Virginia Tighe, who was the central figure in the Bridey Murphy investigation in the 50s, the lady from the United States who was regressed back into being a lady in Southern Ireland in the early 1800s. She developed serious mental health issues, and at one stage, I understand, was committed to psychiatric care. So there are risks. Now, Alvin Bloxom, he conducted several hundred, I think it's about 400 cases of hypnotic regression into past lives, which were recorded. The Bloxom tapes had quite a lot of publicity, and I don't think there were really any problems with people had any problems with that. I don't think there were any issues arising from that. And the work of Alvin Bloxom is covered by Jeffrey Iverson in his book More Lives Than One, that was published in 1976. Now, slightly more controversially, Arthur Gurdon's Cathars. Arthur Gurdon has written several books. This goes back to about late 60s, early 70s. Arthur Gurdon was a National Health Service psychiatrist who regressed his patients back to the Middle Ages, where they were reputed to have been Cathars, many of whom died very traumatic deaths. It's difficult with this one because a lot of people say that he was actually suggesting false memory to them, suggesting memories, they derive false memory from the suggestions he made. That's also, I suppose, a risk with hypnotherapy, that if you've got a good hypnotherapist, that shouldn't happen, but sometimes something can be suggested. And possibly Arthur Gurdon already believed he was a Cathar in the Middle Ages, and it is, they say, possible that he suggested these memories to his psychiatric patients, many of whom may have been quite vulnerable people. So I think Arthur Gurdon's Cathars is one to look at with a little bit of scepticism. Okay, let's move on to reliability. Well, there's false memory, and this has always been a concern with hypnotic regression that it can generate false memory. In fact, also with tapes possibly, the idea that you might false memory may arise. So that's something that you would have to consider, whether what you're remembering, whatever comes up from a regression, is actually true or are real events. Now the other one, similar to false memory, is cryptomnesia. Now this was the one that they said happened with Bridie Murphy. This is where you've read a book or seen a film in the distant past and it's long forgotten, but you then remember the events in the book as if they're part of your own history. And I think one example where this could happen is Robert Louis Stevenson's book Kidnapped, and these are the adventures of David Balfour, who's he's a sort of young man, and it takes place in Scotland in the 1700s, and it's a very good adventure book, and it's written in the first person. And I can imagine reading that book when you're about 8 or 9, because it's written for boys, and when you're about 8 or 9, and you then can imagine yourself as the central character, and the events in the book become your memories. I can see how that happens, particularly under the relaxed mind of hypnotic regression. And of course, it's the same book that you would read when you're quite young. Another possibility is that there is an amorphous collection of memories, or an amorphous collective memory, possibly you could call it, that we can all access. So you may actually be remembering something, a bit like the cloud really, but the events you remember are real events, but they're not actually yours. That's a possibility to consider. And there is also the possibility that you are reading the imprint on the space-time continuum known as the Akashic Records, and this is many people claim to be able to do this, that they can read the Akashic Records and go back through time, and that everything that has ever happened in the universe is and will happen in the future is recorded, and that you can read, if you have the personal level of personal development to do this, then you can read these records, and you may actually be accessing under hypnosis the Akashic Records. But again, maybe remembering real events, but it may not be yours. So there are questions to consider on risk and reliability in hypnotic regression. Now, let's say you decide that hypnotic regression is reliable and you're prepared to take whatever risk there is. Now, why go for it? Okay, but you may have a burning curiosity that you won't rest until you've satisfied. And I think a lot of people have this. They feel they need to know about past lives. They believe in reincarnation, or at least in the possibility of reincarnation, and they feel they need to know. So that would be something that you could satisfy your curiosity. H.P. Blavatsky says leave it alone, but some people possibly can't rest. They have to go for it. Now, it may also be that you have an underlying discontent in this life that you need to satisfy. And you feel that hypnotic regression may be the answer. Now, with this and also the burning desire, there is the risk that you might find something out that you don't really want to know. There may be something that you can't deal with in a previous life. I doubt if CD visualizations would be a problem. They probably wouldn't reveal anything that you couldn't handle, but hypnotic regression might. That's something to consider. But it may be that there's something has happened, something traumatic has happened in a previous life, and getting back to it it's causing problems in this life. Getting back to it may resolve it. So that's something to be looked at. Now there's healing, past life healing, and there's been some people who claim spectacular results with it and people very happy with the outcomes. So if you have something possibly to deal with and want to go back into a past life, then that's an option that's open if you accept that it's reliable and that you take the risk. Also, I do think that with things past life healing and unresolved, something unresolved in this life, that even if you don't access accurate memories, then the actual process of going back into past life, whether it is real past life or not, may release something that solves a problem. So that's an opportunity, that's something to consider. You may not have actually remembered a real past life, but what you have remembered or believe you remembered actually solves a problem. So there you are. If you accept that hypnotic regression into past life is reliable and you accept that there are risks, then it may offer many benefits.